Hello everyone and welcome along to Racing Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by Oddschecker in association with Bet365. Do I really need to tell you how close we are to this year's Cheltenham Festival? If you're tuning in to watch us, I'm pretty certain that you know that already. On today's show, we'll be hearing from the one and only Fergal O'Brien. We'll be getting up to date with Bet365's Pat Cooney and, as always, chatting away to the man who is also part of this Racing Weekly podcast. It is Sam Turner. Sam, you, like me, going to the Cheltenham Festival for a long time. It gets even more exciting, despite what people say about small fields, etc. That's maybe for another day, but just from a purist point of view, I can't wait.
I don't actually mind one or two small fields, Rish, if I'm honest, because when you look at the two handicaps that we're looking at on Tuesday, 20 plus runners in both races, you need a bit of respite, really. As long as you've got each way turns, which we have in all bar one of the races on the first day, I think it gives punters a little bit of a chance. And as long as you've got quality as well, and not just two horses that are dominating the market and then a few rags to fill the gaps up. So I think we've got a nice balance on Tuesday. Yeah, it'd be nice to have one or two more in the National Hunt Chase, but we've got what we've got. We've got to deal with that hand as we see it. But the two handicaps are fiercely competitive. Thankfully, we're going to get some enhanced place offers, I would think, from Bet365, etc. So that gives us a bit of a chance as a punter, and we can work our way through the card now, and looking forward to tackling it.
Yes, well, we know the runners for Tuesday. We know the jockey bookings. We also have a pretty decent idea of the decisions made by the trainers. So for this edition of Racing Weekly, we are going to focus on Tuesday at the festival. And just before we get into it, a reminder that Oddschecker is the only tip you really need for Cheltenham. The festival almost upon us. If you're having a bet, you'll get the most out of it by using Oddschecker. Compare odds, find the best special offers for every race from more than 25 bookmakers in one place. We're going to start, as always, with the Supreme Novices Hurdle, a race that we've spoken about a lot. I am speaking about it right now still with a heavy heart because I'm still disappointed that Sir Gerhard's not in the race. But I've got to put that to one side because I want to find the winner. Sam, start me off.
Well, it looks like there's going to be a fair bit of pace on Rish. That's the first thing to say. We've just got 9 runners, but at least 3 of them want to go forward. Dysart Dynamo, the very ebullient, unbeaten horse of Willie Mullins, is being one of them. Kilcrut, who obviously has managed to shed his maiden tag eventually over hurdles, looks another one that likes to force it. And Paul Nicholls' representative, Silent Revolution. All 3 of them like to get a bit of a head start on their field and race on the pace. And so that should ensure that we have a championship pace. I think if anything's leading Dysart Dynamo, they're probably going too quick. That's my first initial thought about this race. And I think there is a possibility that there could be a little bit of a pace collapse late. Hopefully that isn't the case, because I'm a very big fan of Dysart Dynamo. I love the way that he races through races. Yes, he can be a little bit keen, a little bit on the latch, but I think he's got a lot of quality, this horse. But if there is a little chink in his armour, is that if he goes a little bit too hard, is ridden a little bit too aggressively, he's a little bit too free, that's going to then set it up for Constitution Hill, a very strong stayer at 2 mile. He's going to love the hill, travels beautifully, hurdles very nimbly, very efficiently, very proficiently. And he's the type of horse that we can see in the years to come is going to develop either into a champion chase horse or definitely a champion hurdle horse. He's got that much quality about him. So he's the main worry for me and Dysart Dynamo fans. The fact that halfway up the running, Dysart Dynamo, if he's not well enough clear of Constitution Hill, he could then be vulnerable to a late attack.
Yeah, I'm looking at the race now without the rose-tinted glasses of a Sir Gerhard selection. I'm of the opinion that it could be set up for Constitution Hill, and the ease in which he travels through races and the fact that he's pretty generous when he comes off the bridle. And touchwood, so far in the 2 runs that we've seen at Sandown, he jumps pretty well. So I thought he would be the solid option. But the beauty is Constitution Hill, John Bon and Dysart Dynamo are 3 horses that we are yet to see just how good they are. So it's not a strong view now that Sir Gerhard's out, I have, but I'm excited just to see who's going to have to dig deepest and what they'll all find, because I'm pretty certain that all 3 of them will have to go a little bit deeper into their reserves than they've done so far.
Yeah, I think if there's a surprise package in the race, I thought it might be Bring on the Night, who's another one that's equipped with the tongue tie for the first time. tremendously impressed with him at Nace. It's interesting that he's been allowed to take his chance as well. I think he's a 25-1 chance. As we know at this meeting from past runnings of bumpers and all sorts of races here, the Willie Mullins second, third, fourth string are quite often very potent forces in their own right. It's the bookmakers that make him 25-1. Yeah, I know he hasn't got the balance of form or the body of work that the main 2 or 3 protagonists have got so far in this race, but I thought he was a very, very interesting contender. It's interesting as well that he's been allowed to take his chance with Willie Mullins holding 2 strong hands, really, with Dysart Dynamo and Kilcrud.
All right, we're going to move on from here and talk about the second race on Tuesday, which is the Sporting Life Arkle, a race for which Edwardstone has been at the top of the market for some time and has been a very solid selection. 5-2 on the oddschecker grid. Blue Lord 4-1, Riviere de Tel 4-1, 8 Spa, the top 3. How do you see it, Stan? Are you thinking the solid selection is going to be the play?
I think he's a very, very solid horse, isn't he, Edwardstone? Has he got the brilliance of 1 or 2 past Arkle winners? I don't know, but he's very, very proficient. He's slick at his fences in the main. I didn't think he was great at Kempton early on this season, but every horse is allowed just a little bit of an off day. He still won by a wide margin. Brilliant at Warwick, which takes a hell of a lot of jumping round. He's been very good in some very strongly run handicap hurdles as well. I know he comes up through a different route, really, into this race that normally the archetypal Arkle horse would do, but I think he's battle hardened. He doesn't mind a strong championship pace. We've seen that on a number of occasions. His stable haven't got a great record at Cheltenham in recent times, but that horse doesn't know that. Edwardstone doesn't know it. And yes, he might be outside the age stats, which are perfect for this race as well. But he's got a lot of positives, hasn't he? I mean, he's just a winner, and he would be unbeaten over fences, but for being brought down at Warwick early on this season. So he's a good starting point. I'm going to take him on with the mare. I think Riviere de Tel, she gets 1 or 2 allowances. I think she was a bit unlucky. We've covered it sort of ad nauseum on the podcast in weeks leading up to the race, but I thought she was a little bit unlucky at Leopardstown, not to win there. I think she's a really tough, solid, durable, hardy, battle-hardened mare, and I think if you can get anywhere near an each-way price about her, I'll be taking that. And the other fly in the ointment for me is Curse Sublime, who I thought would run in the Grand Annual. Yeah. Unfortunately, he's been rerouted to here, probably when they saw the handicap mark. An Irish trainer not happy with the handicap mark. There's a first. So Curse Sublime at sort of 14-16-1. If there are 4 places on offer, I would also have a shilling each way on that as well.
Okay, I think Edwardstone is the solid horse, and I expect him to go close to winning it. I know that the Alan King team haven't had the best of luck at the festival recently, but of course they have won this race before. Voipur Steadies and My Way to Solzen, another previous for him in this race. So when speaking about Edwardstone in relation to those 2 horses, he was after the Kempton win, which I know that Sam pointed out wasn't as flash as a couple of the other wins over fences. He was still pretty positive about Edwardstone in comparison to My Way and Voipur at this relative stage of their career. So he would be my selection. But last week on the show, we had Brian Cooper on Racing Weekly, and he spoke about one of the leading contenders for this year's Arkle, and that's Autumn Couleur.
Autumn Couleur fell with me at the Dublin Racing Festival here in the Irish Arkle. He was one of the rides I was very much looking forward to that weekend. I'd love another crack at him. I think he's gone in under the radar a bit. He's got a massive engine, and in an Arkle, I think it's a little bit open this year. If I saw my name stuck down beside him at 12 o'clock on Sunday morning, I'd be very happy.
So interesting thoughts from Brian Cooper about Autumn Couleur. Time for a summary. Riviere de Tel, you're sticking with her, yep, Sam? I'm
sticking with her, and I will definitely have a couple of shillings each way, Curse Sublime as well, because I don't know what I'd do with myself if that one unbacked.
Okay, well, I will stick with Edwardstone in the Arkle for Alan King, and I wish you the best of luck with Riviere de Tel. I suspect she'll beat Blue Lord this time, whatever happens. Okay, so we've chatted about the Supreme, we've chatted about the Arkle. Now we're just going to take a pause on previewing day 1 to speak to a very special guest on Racing Weekly. Well, with Cheltenham just a few hours away, it's a real pleasure to have someone who has had a superb season. It's Fergal O'Brien. Not only does he continue to dominate social media, but he's also dominated on the track as well with another wonderfully successful season so far, Fergal. But with just hours to go before one of the greatest shows in sport in general. What's the feeling like as a competitor?
It's fantastic. Look, for me, Rishi, as you know, living so close to the track, we're about 8 miles from the track. It's the best week of the year. It's the build up. It's, you know, I've always compared it to Christmas, and I love Christmas. It's just a massive build up. Christmas is over in a day. At least we got 4 days of this, you know. So for me, really, it sort of starts really tomorrow. Stratford, I love the Stratford meeting tomorrow. We've only got one runner, unfortunately. Hope to have a few more, but yeah, I love Stratford on the Monday, and then into Cheltenham on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So really, really looking forward to it.
More importantly, Ferg, is the Stratford winner going to win? Or the Stratford winner?
Well, he's been off for a while, so will he win? He'll be trying his best anyway, but he'll qualify for a race in Musselburgh, which is the most important thing.
Yeah, and everyone obviously trying very hard at Cheltenham to bag that winner. Fergal, just looking through your list of runners, I sort of highlighted 4, and Sam and I just briefly chatted about it. 4 horses that I thought would be leading the way for you: the Imperial Alcazar in whichever race you finally decide on, Gumball, Poetic Music, and Alaphilippe. Would that be the right quartet to focus on?
Yeah, certainly. We won't have any runners there on Tuesday. We got one runner at Sedgefield, and my daughter Fern rides a Suddle on Tuesday on the flat. And then Wednesday it'll be Gumball and Poetic Music, and Thursday it'll be Imperial Alcazar in the Place and Alaphilippe in the Pertemps. Yeah.
All right. Well, if you don't mind, we'll spin through them one by one. Imperial Alcazar, you say, heading for the plate. Bolted up at Cheltenham last time. What are your thoughts on the chances?
He's a very classy horse. He's a very, very good horse in his day, and we think we got him in great form. He went to the Pertemps last year, you know, as one of the fancied ones after winning quite nicely at Warwick. We've done a bit more with him this year and changed things around a little bit for him this year. But Paddy's really, really hopeful of him. We've had him away for a couple of days. He's a bit lazy at home, so we've had him away for a couple of days galloping and stuff into Lambourne. Martin Keatley kindly lets us use his gallops, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing him. You know, just 2 mile 4, I think at the minute is his trip. It means that Paddy can just let him stride on and do what he does. And I was impressed with him the last day. I think there was some nicely handicapped horses in that field, and if he can run to that sort of form, he'll need to run to that sort of form and a bit better. Then he'll be in the shake-up at the end of it. Yeah.
He's second in the oddschecker grid at the moment behind Celeb Dalen. It's Imperial Alcazar around 8, the Glancing Queen also 8. So a single figure horse, according to the market, heading to the festival is something to be pleased with. Sorry, Sam, I think I butted in just over you there.
No, all I was going to say was, you know, he's obviously a horse that races fairly handy, Ferg, and that race is often won by those sort of horses that race on the speed. There looks a fair few that want to get on with it as well. Would you be just happy just to take a little bit of a lead, or have you just got to bounce out the gates and ride in brave?
No, Paddy. If you watch Paddy Brennan over the last 20 years, there's no better man to take a lead, I can tell you. Look, the idea would be to get a good start. Like you said, there's going to be an awful lot of pace there, and we certainly won't want to be forcing that pace. But we want to be handy. You know, we don't want to be back towards the back. We want to be middle to the front, really, and in a good position. And most importantly, we want to be where he's comfortable. So he's got a big stride in him. He jumps better when he's let roll on. You know, I think Chepstow, we were a bit disappointed with him, Chepstow, but actually Rebecca's horse, I think it was Pat's fancy to beat him. And I don't think he's any mug, and we gave it an awful lot of weight. And 3 out if you stop the race, it was how far we were going to win by him. But he never really got into a rhythm of jumping that day because Paddy was always trying to save him over 3 miles. And I think he paid for that in the end because he made a few mistakes that he didn't make when he went to Cheltenham. And I think, you know, but it probably wasn't as bad a run as we thought in the end. But we're certainly looking forward to seeing him there. Yeah.
All right, jump in and talk about Gumball in the Grand Annual on Wednesday. A horse, you look at his best form, he looks quite well handicapped. What are your thoughts, Fergal?
Yeah, he ran very well for us for his first run for us on the flat. Holly Doyle won him around York, won a good flat race in New York, and we were delighted with him. And you know, we thought that, you know, he'd obviously enjoyed the change. So I don't think Mr. Hobbs didn't do anything wrong with him, you know. So we were delighted and surprised to get him. But we thought, well, at least he shows that he's enjoyed. He's changed the scenery. You know, he won very well. And then he ran okay for us. He ran okay at Carlisle. Paddy was pleased with him. Very disappointed with him at Newbury. He just never going at all. And then we went to Ludlow, and he just sort of he dwelled to the start again, which sort of cost him some ground. But then, Paddy said he did enjoy passing horses. So I've got to speak to Mr. Warner first, but we might just pop some cheap pieces on him, and I think the race will be really run to suit him. They just go so fast, he won't have to make the running. And if he's, like I said, no better man than Paddy Brown to get a lead, and if he can get a lead on him, then all the better.
Yeah, I was going to say he's just the kind of horse that really might just take to the rigours of that race, isn't he, Fergal? Just keep him interested. He's got his idiosyncrasy, easy for me to say. He's got his foibles.
Yeah, he has, and like Ludlow, I don't know really why. Jack, Mr. Warner's grandson, said he Newbury won another day. He was a bit slow jumping off, and so at home you would know he's very well at home. He worked really well on Saturday. We worked them all on Saturday. We usually work him on a Friday. We worked him all this Saturday, and we were delighted with him. So fingers crossed. We can. They say, firstly, that he jumps off well with him, and that the Paddy keep him interested.
And also on Wednesday, Fergie, you've got Poetic Music, who's 3 from 3, 1 for John Butler, 2 for you. And the win last time I thought was really good because she obviously had to make a bit of ground up late on in the race, but she went through the line quite nicely, suggesting over a mile 6 that the extra distance is going to be within her compass. I thought she could run all right in, obviously, a race where everyone's talking about 2 horses from Ireland, as per usual. Yeah,
look, again, we probably, after she won it at Cheltenham and New Year's Day, we thought we'd probably save it for Aintree. The owner it's his first horse. He's local, really nice local lad, and he said, look, my dream was always to have a runner at Cheltenham Festival, so why not? She won at Newbury. She won over a mile 6. She's got an incredible weight allowance because she only carries 10 stone 2. She gets a 4-year-old allowance, and she also gets the mare's allowance. So she carries 10 stone 2. And look, if we finish in the first 4, we'd be delighted. The Irish horses look very, very hard to beat. But she has course form. I think she won that race from the back, and it was a mile 6, and she wasn't stopping at the line. So the 2 miles we don't think will be a problem to her. So again, we haven't got many runners, but the ones that we're running on, and again, I'm really looking forward to seeing her in the track, and more importantly, giving her owner Ismail a nice day out, really, and hopefully she can do us proud.
Yeah, she did a good speed figure when she won there, Fergal. So she's definitely not too far behind the main protagonists in quotation marks. So she could be a bit of an interesting one there, a bit of a dark horse for the race.
Yeah, hopefully, because I think she's probably also improved a little bit, and I think the longer nights and stuff, the fillies tend to come into their own this time of year, and I think she's improved a bit from January the 1st. We hadn't had her that long. John Butler did a great job, and we hadn't had her that long when we ran her at Newbury, and then she obviously rolled on to Cheltenham. So she's had a nice break. We freshened her up, and I couldn't be happier with her on Saturday. So we're very, very pleased with her.
And one other horse to mention, one that I think quite a few people like for the Patents on Thursday, is Alaphilippe, who was pretty smart last season, ran well at the festival, and the comeback run, certainly the way he travelled through the race was most certainly eye-catching. How pleased were you that that's going to bring him on enormously for the big day?
Yeah, 100%. We were delighted with the Warwick run. He'd been off for a long time. Unfortunately, his plan was to go novice chasing this year, and he got injured in the field when he came back to us in about the middle of August. He got kicked in the field, and so he was off for that amount of time. And then so he was late coming back in, and so we thought, look, we'll just go Thames route and getting qualified for Cheltenham. He's already a graded winner. He won a Grade 2 hurdle last year, and we think he's very good. Like if I had one wish, that it would rain from now till Thursday. We won't use the ground as an excuse, but I just know that he will be he's a better horse on softer ground. What he does do is that he just gives you everything. He's the most uncomplicated horse you could ever wish to have in your yard. He gets up in the morning, he eats, he works, and then he sleeps. He's so straightforward. he's just a fantastic horse to have around the place, and I'm really looking forward to him running. But we go back to the old handicaps again. I mean, just we could talk about it all day, but I mean, just the Irish are making mockery of the handicaps because they did it again on Saturday. For a horse to come over and win the way it did on Saturdays. So, as well handicapped as we might think we are, I'm sure there's going to be some Irish horses a lot better handicapped than us.
Well, at least he's had the sides of the track though, Fergal. Not all of theirs have, and that was an encouraging run in the Albert Bartlett, wasn't it, from off the pace that day?
Yeah, I said to Paddy on the day at the Albert Bartlett, I won't swear on camera, I said, why were you so far back? And he said, I wasn't far back, and he got very irate about it. And I thought, well, maybe I'll have to go back and watch it. I went back and watched it, and he was a long way back. And so I said to him, the other day, I said, have you watched that race from last year? And he went, no, I haven't. So anyway, he went and watched it 11 months later, and he rang me up. He says, yeah, I was a long way back, wasn't I? So, but he finished like a train, and that's just Alaphilippe. You could ride him last, and as soon as you turn him in and ask him for an effort, he will just give you 100%. And that's what we know we're going to get. So I'm looking forward to him. We're going to put a tongue tie on him. At Warwick, Paddy just felt like when he went for him, when they turned in, they sort of went for him. He thought he heard a little bit of a gargle. Could have been down to fitness as well. So we're sticking the tongue tie on him, and hopefully that will help him a little bit as well. It's all about percentages, but we've been done in the pretense before by presenting Percy. Dr. Simon played the clip of Davy Russell going mad before the pretense about how badly treated presenting Percy was, who had probably 2 stone in hand. But so anyway, look, we'll go there with he'll be our best chance, and we couldn't have him in a better place. I'm really looking forward to him running.
Fergal, just before you go, because obviously we know it's a busy time, we don't want to keep you too long, but we're just going to ask you very quickly about some of the championship races, if you don't mind, and who you thought, is it a straightforward case of Honeysuckle in the Champion Hurdle?
Yeah, like I honestly do. My heart definitely hopes so, because I think she's a wonderful mare, and I think she's captured everyone's imagination. I think Willie's horse, she'll have to run below par for anything to beat her. That's for me. That's the only thing that's going to beat her, is that she'll run below par. Champion
Chase, Energumen, Shishkin, maybe Chacun Pour Soi. Have you got any views on that?
Yeah, I'm all over Shishkin. I'm afraid. I just think what he did, what good horses did the last day, and he won in spite of a lot going wrong for him. The track, the ground, and what I loved about him most was he was beat at the last, and he really, really wanted to win. And that, you can't train that into a horse. That's in him, and he really he's a champion and he's a winner. Yeah, so I want to see him win. Yeah, for sure.
The Stayers Hurdle, Flooring Porter, Classical Dream. Any hope for Paisley Park supporters he could come back and do it, and one for Britain?
No, I think it's going to go the Irish way. I'm afraid. I was delighted the way he ran the last day. It was lovely for Emma and Barry, and I was actually in the paddock when they were celebrating, and it was fantastic. But I think he'll struggle, to be fair.
And the Gold Cup, Aplutard, Galvin, Manila Indo, Protectorat? ?
No, look, Dan's gone down the brave man's route, and he's kept all these horses fresh. And that's what I love about Dan, is that he's not afraid to do things differently, and hopefully it'd be lovely if it paid off for him. But Manila Indo, I think he's been there, done it. Delighted that Robbie Powers kept it riding him when I think they could have put Jack Kennedy back on him. So I think Manila Indo could come back and do it again.
And the final thing is, Fergal, you said at the start of this conversation, you said it's like the start or just before Christmas, and you love Christmas. So if you were to bag your first Cheltenham Festival winner, what would it mean to Fergal O'Brien? What would it mean to your team?
Oh, it would mean everything to us. I've been training 10 years and always trained close to the track, and not to have a festival winner, it's starting to grate on me a little bit now. So I definitely would love to get that one out of the way, and and hopefully that could be the start of a few more to come, because we've got a great team of owners, and they've got a great team of staff and fantastic facilities. So hopefully if we can get one, then hopefully others will follow.
And the best hope of one?
Alaphilippe.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed for you.
I was just going to say, it took Josh Gifford a hell of a long time though, Ferg. So keep the patience, keep the faith.
No, definitely keep the faith. Thanks very much for having me on.
No, thank you. That's Fergal O'Brien. We wish
thank you.
Best of luck at this year's Cheltenham Festival. Much to Fergal O'Brien, and we wish him the very best of luck at this year's festival. Hopefully he'll get that first one on the board. But what about the champion hurdle on day one? 10 go to post. Sam, obviously Honeysuckle is the horse that the race revolves around. It's pretty obvious that if she runs up to her best, getting allowances, I think she wins, irrespective of what potential Appreciate it has, because I think he faces a huge task on his comeback run to take on Honeysuckle, where she's obviously the reigning champion, don't you?
Yeah, I certainly get where you're coming from, and she's got brilliant claims, 14 from 14. She's won round Cheltenham. She handles any ground, and she's tactically so versatile. The only thing is, I looked at last year's race. Now, she won it by 6 wickets. She absolutely bolted up. She was never really in danger, and she was backed accordingly as well. Cracking the money that came for that morning, ridiculous. But she beat Epatante, who got a bad back and just wasn't right. She was 4-1 second favourite. Goshen was third favourite, 11-2, racing at a track which doesn't really seem to the best of advantage. Certainly not that tight Tuesday track. So there wasn't a great strength in depth there. I think Abracadabra even fell early on as well, a 10-1 poke. So in this year's race, I think there's a little bit more depth to the race. Obviously, Appreciate it. It's trying to do something that no other horse has ever done, win a first time out champion hurdle, or win first time out in the champion hurdle. But if any man can do it, then it's Willie Mullins. We know with Cavega and other various horses that he's managed to produce very fresh and very, fresh off the shelf, so to speak, that he can do that. And then, you look down the list as well, Tiupu, we haven't seen him fully tested yet. Adagio with the tongue time for the first time, plenty of Cheltenham form. So there are horses that you think could at least provide some stiffer competition than she faced last year. So there are reasons for believing that, it might not just be the coronation we all think. Okay,
well, obviously riders, trainers, punters, owners, they all had their view on Honeysuckle. And last week when we spoke to Brian Cooper on Racing Weekly, we asked him about how he may ride against her in the champion hurdle.
Well, it is Cheltenham, so you never say there's never not a hope. But I've ridden against her a lot of times in Ireland, and I've made the run and tried to go slow, tried to turn into a gallop, and it doesn't seem to matter what we do over here. Rachel just has so much confidence in her. If we're going quick, she's happy to let us off. If we're going slow, I think was it last year in the Irish Champion Hurdle, I rode Petit Mouchoir for Gordon. And I tried to set it up down the back, and Rachel just arrived up my outside 5 out and set sail, not a bother on her, so she seems unbeatable, but you can never say that around Cheltenham. I'd say Paul Townend and Robbie, who would probably ride Appreciate, and Robbie Power on Tube, who will be studying this more so than any race, trying to see what way they can beat her. But at the minute, she looks unbeatable, and she's a fantastic mare.
Once again, really interesting thoughts from Brian Cooper on riding against Honeysuckle and how you might try and beat her. But the task is pretty hard. So ultimately, Sam, are you looking for a play or two against her each way, or is this one that you might just watch and cheer her on?
I probably wouldn't bet heavily in the race, because I think if you haven't seen Appreciate it for 364 days, he's going to be a very difficult horse to back unless you're desperate to have a bet. But I'm sort of edging towards tipping him, and I probably will back Adagio. I'll probably have a look at the Bet365 markets without Honeysuckle as well and see what they've got on offer, because obviously with the 10 runners, with her out the race, you've still got 3 places in those markets. So that might be a route that most punters, or some punters who don't want to take the very thin odds about Honeysuckle, might explore.
I'm just going to give a mention to Tommy's Oscar, because I think of all the stories at this year's Cheltenham Festival, it might be one of the most romantic, certainly a fairy tale story of Ian and Anne Hamilton, who have, only 6 horses that they have in their care. They're principally dairy farmers.
Yeah, they've got more cows than horses, haven't they, Rish?
I read an article where they're saying that they need to find someone to come and look after the cows for the day in order for them to go with the horse to Cheltenham. So if anyone's got free time in their part of the world, then they could use the hand. But on a serious note, the horse is still unexposed, and he's getting better with every run. And he came off a pretty fast pace to win the trial at Haydock. And you just don't know how good he is, because he travels quite nicely and he finds a fair amount off the bridle. So I thought at 33-1, which is what I can see here on the odds checker grid. I might just throw a couple of quid each way and hope that he can and sneak into a place, because like Tiupu, he's a horse that we just don't quite know where the ceiling of the ability is.
Yeah, and I think that's the point with this year's race. I think there are one or two horses like that we just don't know enough about them to make a accurate assessment of what chances they've got of beating Honeysuckle. Last year, I thought there was one or two, you got the Chargers in the race and Goshen's and Epatante. You knew where you were with most of those. I mean, Epatante could be a huge price, 14, 16 to 1 for a previous winner who's backing Great Nick. I mean, she's got a serious frame chance as well. So I don't think it's quite the one horse war that we think it is.
All right. Well, we've had a look at the 3 Grade 1 races on the opening day. We'll take a pause before looking through the rest of the card to speak to a Grade 1 guest in Pat Cooney. Now on Racing Weekly, we are delighted to be joined by Pat Cooney from our partners at Bet365. Pat, I imagine like you, like everybody else, buzzing ahead of the festival.
Absolutely, Rishi. Yeah, hello to everyone on the show. And what I would say, Rishi, it's amazing. Every year we're exactly the same. Everyone in the office, we're all defensive in the build up to Cheltenham. And as soon as we get the final decks through, we just find so many flaws in these favourites. I think Honeysuckle is now the biggest price she's been for ages. Edward Stone's been the biggest for he's been for ages. And we just all seem to have these this bit of bravado about the opening day. But historically, this is a day for the punters. So it's going to be pretty wild. There's loads and loads of bets flying through. So it's as ever, once you get the final decks, we pretty much know what the ground is. It's all systems go.
Okay, so you mentioned a couple of horses there, Honeysuckle and Edward Stone. Are there any particularly big movers now that we know the decks for Tuesday?
Not really, no. I think of the movers, I think there seems to be horses being backed at prices. Horten Callure in the Arkle has been a popular order. I would imagine that one will be less. But I think pretty much all of those ones stood their ground. So we're in good order on the race. And I think what we're seeing now really, Rishi, is a load of associated multiples, lots of Gordon Elliott's, Ackers flying through, Willie Mullins, and so on and so forth. But there were no surprises at the final decks, nor indeed at the 5-day decks. So we're pretty much in good order in this race as bookmakers.
So Pat, have you cleaned up on Sir Gerhard going and switched to the Ballymore then?
Not really. I think there was always a school of thought from connections that they might go for that race as an option. It certainly looks the easier on paper, though, doesn't it, Sam? So yeah, there's not been any tremendous ones that stop the Ackers from a long way out. So we're going into this into the meeting with pretty much a clean slate of liabilities, really, which is unusual to say the least.
So I'm still on the phone to Willie. Willie, what have you done to me? Anyway, you mentioned Ackers, Pat, and obviously the old tradition back in the day when it was Ruby Walsh and Willie Mullins, you backed them in an Acker on the opening day. Anything that you can see might be rolling up on day one, Acker wise?
Well, I think Paul Townend has a very strong book of rides, and that's certainly he'd be one that would be very cautious of. But the fields are, there are no surprises, are there? Hopefully we'll get a good blend of results in the race. I think people have been waiting for the likes of Nicky Henderson to hit form. He did have that winner impressively at Sandown on Saturday. So his horses have gathered momentum. What we want is a good blend of results, really, but certainly very much a Mullins-Elliott domination, really, in terms of what we're laying. But then, of course, if they don't have a particularly good day one, we'll be big and brave and we'll take them on in day two. This meeting, is all about recency bias. If they struggle on the Tuesday, everyone will be against them on the Wednesday. But I still have bad memories. I think Willie Mullins went 2 days without a winner at the festival a few years ago. And then he had a 4-timer on the Thursday. And we weren't so big and brave after that day, that's for sure.
Yeah, there was a lot of people saying, he was 15, 16, the loser sequence, which would normally be about four festivals for some trainers, wouldn't it? But it was 2 days for Willie.
Yeah, absolutely. But as I say, it's Tuesday is normally the day we struggle. There's 9 handicaps over the 4 days, and we tend to do best on the Thursday when there's actually 3 handicaps. So that's probably our moving day, to use a golf parlance. But these handicaps again, the punters have got every chances in them. We have 2 handicaps on the Tuesday, and with first 6 places. So that's given that there's only 20 odd runners, you can draw a line through a few of them quite comfortably. So There's plenty of value throughout the card, and day one we're all going to be taking our chances on the basis we've got another 3 days to get it all straight back.
Yeah, one thing you mentioned to me, Pat, that stuck in my mind when we spoke earlier on in the Racing Weekly series of podcasts. You mentioned about the first race and being prepared to take a chance in the first race, laying perhaps a bit generously with horses, because you got, the rest of Tuesday plus the other 3 days. Is that a race that you might be prepared to take on a Dysart Dynamo in?
Yes, I think Rishi, I think given the number of runners are there, I think you'll probably find most of the bookmakers are probably come Tuesday afternoon being betting as low as 1% per runner, which given that we've been betting to 150 odd percents and so forth throughout the build up to the meeting, the value is going to be from 10 o'clock onwards. The one thing I would say to any punters out there, just get to 10 o'clock on the day of each race and you'll be surprised how big some of these horses will be. I could see there being plenty of 5-2 the field about the big two in the opener on Tuesday, even though they're both coming in with bullish reports about how brilliantly they're working. And then I just flick on to race 2 with Edwardstone, a horse it seems to be most people are thinking, I suppose he'll win, but he's not really been well backed. I could see him being near a 3-1. I know he goes there again. Connections are very happy with him. But punters aren't just getting stuck into him. I think they just tend to feel that the 2-1, 9-4 is short enough. I could see him being 11-4 and 3, and then all of a sudden being an extremely popular horse. So prices are going to dictate opinions with a lot of these runners throughout the week. But keep an eye on those each way terms throughout the meeting, especially on the handicaps.
Pat, I could see that Arkle being a fourth field race. I mean, there's been a few horses parachuted into it. I mean, Cursibleen wasn't going to run. Gabinarco obviously is a late addition. Brave Shashka and one or two others. I mean, all of a sudden it looks a lot more competitive numbers-wise than we've seen perhaps in recent years. Yes,
in recent years, Sam, we've had horses that look pretty much a good thing, really. But Edwardstone, he's ended up as favourite, hasn't he? He keeps on winning, but other main players have dropped by the wayside throughout the season. So he's there. I get the common consent. He's a worthy favourite, but there's others in the race who wouldn't have a great deal to improve. And he is an 8-year-old. The stats gurus don't like 8-year-olds. He hasn't got that typical profile of an Arkle winner, in that he was a handicap hurdler last year. So he's one of those that, as I say, I think bookmakers will be keen to take him on as well. But, we could easily be 2-0 down after the first 2 races at this rate.
Let's hope. Pat, we're going to close off with what I'm calling the Pat nap of day 1. What's it going to be?
Well, I've missed all the Gaelic Warrior hype in the Boodles, so I'm not going to be backing him at his price at the moment. I thought I saw a horse run a couple of weeks ago, the Tide Turns, and he was fourth to Tihopu, who by 3:30 on Thursday may well be winning the Champion Hurdle. So I quite like the Tide Turns of Gordon Elliott. He struck me as a horse that he looks as well handicapped as anything in the race as well. I'm taking on Gaelic Warrior. That may be foolhardy, but he's about 3 times the price, which appeals to me. So he'll do for me on day 1.
Okay, the day 1 Pat nap is the Tide Turns in the Boodles. Pat, thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you the very best of luck at this year's Cheltenham Festival on a personal level, not so much for a professional level and who you represent. But thank you.
Kind words.
Cheers, Pat.
Well, thanks a lot to Pat. Now, Sam and I are going to go through the remaining 4 races on the opening day, starting with the Ultima, the handicap chase over 3 miles a furlong. Does he know? 7-1 on the oddschecker grid. Death Duty, 8-1 Noble Yates, 9s. How do you see this race, Sam? Is there something that's appealing to you?
I see it being an absolute burn-up, Rish, if I'm honest. I mean, I found probably 6, 7, maybe even 8 front runners. Obviously, Froden's in the race. Vintage Clouds, Fantastic Ass. Does he know likes to get on with it?
Yep.
Kilteely Briggs, Lost in Translation. So there's any amount of pace here, and I don't think you're going to be wanting to race from too far off the pace unless they do go a million and there is a complete pace collapse. Traditionally, lightly raced chasers, either first or second season, have had quite a good record in this race. Now, obviously, Foden puts a little bit of a spanner in the works because he's got top weight, but we know that he can win with top weight in these handicaps because he's proved that in the past with some very domineering wins. But I quite liked, obviously, Kim Bailey's horse. Does he know? Fits into those sort of criteria that you would look for ideally in a race like this. He's got his own way of getting from one side of a fence to another, as he as he displayed at Ascot last time, which is a little disconcerting. And a lot of it about him will be, can he find that early rhythm? I note as well, there's one horse that's just snuck in right down the bottom of the weights that represent connections who've got a really good record at this race the last 10 years, and that's Jerry called Roque, who is ridden by Tom Scudamore, must be his lowest weight, 10 stone. Yeah, couldn't get a blow in at Warwick last time, but that suited the winner of Clare Surf, who was off the front that day. But he'd previously run really well at Newbury in a top handicap behind St. Palais, second to Pat's Fancy, who's got a bit of a squeak in the 4 miler, or the National Hunt Chase now. So I thought he was very interesting down the foot of the weights at around 16, 14, 16 to 1.
Yeah, 16 to 1 on the grid, 16 to 1 with Bet365. I like Noble Yates. I mentioned in earlier editions of Racing Weekly, I thought he's got an attractive mark, trained by Emmett Mullins and unexposed over this type of trip. So he was my selection. He's available generally 9 to 1 across the board. Korak Rambler is another horse I like, but he made that mistake at Ascot last time, and I'm just concerned whether he's ready for a race quite as tough as this.
Yeah, he would need a pace collapse, wouldn't he? I think, coming from where he normally does.
But he's got the pace, hopefully, for that to happen. So those were the horses that I'd sort of had a look at, but I ended up going with Noble Yates. The Mares Hurdle also on the opening day, Sam. Brother Mares Hurdle. Tell Me Something Girl, 100 to 30. Queensbrook, 9 to 2. Stormy Island, 11 to 2. Burning Victory, 8. Mrs. Milner, 10s. How do you see this one?
Was a couple I liked here. Queensbrook, who finished third in that bumper a couple of years ago behind Appreciated, and Fernie Hollow, probably one of the best championship bumpers that we've seen at Cheltenham. And she was only beaten 5 lengths there. She's done okay over hurdles subsequently, and I thought she looked as though she was coming back to somewhere like her best with a career best performance at Punchestown last time behind Burning Victory. I quite like her chance, especially with the Cheltenham form already in the bank. And I think Stormy Island as well, talking of having Cheltenham form in the bank, she hasn't got a lot more to prove now. She's been a great purchase by her new connections, who sort of only purchased her to breed from her and hoped to win a race or two. Well, Willie Mullins turned her inside out again, didn't he? So I think, given that Paul Townend's picked her, and she's been the buzz horse from the Mullins camp for a while now for this race. So I think those two would be the ones that I'd be sweetest on. Probably Queensbrook, because she'd be ridden a little bit more patiently, I would think. Yeah. What about yourself?
Boring. I like Tell Me Something Girl. Obviously, she won the Mares Novice Hurdle last year at the festival. That was pretty impressive. And she obviously beat Magic Days, who's looked promising so far over fences and lines up in the Arkle. I quite liked her run last time, and she hasn't run since December when she was behind Royal Kahala, and she wasn't beaten that far. She will come here fresh, and she didn't run through that horrible spell. She ran obviously at the end of December, but then she hasn't run since. That horrible spell for the stable through end of December into January, into early February almost. So I'm hoping that coming here without a run since, back to a track where she's obviously excelled at. 100 to 30, I was happy to take a price on that. Just mention one other horse, Marie's Rock. She had a few different options at this year's festival. She is an improved performer this season. I remember early on last season when Nicky Henderson actually thought she might potentially be a sort of champion hurdle contender. He had her entered along with Epatante in the fighting fifth early on in the season. Obviously, Epatante went there and she didn't. That's the sort of standing that she's always been held in. She's very talented. She's only had the one mishap this season where she got hampered at Kempton. But other than that, it's been really good progress from her. And I thought at around 12 to 1, she might be a little bit of each way value. But Tell Me Something Girl, my selection, Marie's Rock, won at a bit of a price.
Okay, so we put 4 different ones up for that race.
So hopefully we'll finish.
Good work.
Yeah, between the 4 of us, we'll get something in there. Right, okay, the Boodles Juvenile Handicap Hurdle next. The penultimate race on the opening day of the festival. Gaelic Warrior. Everyone's heard a lot about Gaelic Warrior. 5 to 2 favourite on the oddschecker grid. The tide turns. The Pat Nap on day 1 at 13 to 2. Brazil 10s. Champion Green 12s. HMS Seahorse 14s. 16s bar those. Where are you going with, Sam?
I've had a couple of wagers here, Rish. Nothing too extravagant, but the tide turns with the tongue tie on for the first time. I like his chances, as Pat alluded to, and I think everybody spotted the run at Garum, which was a nice qualifying run. travelled beautifully to the bottom of the straight and then just didn't pick up on horrible ground that day behind Tiupu and the Red Mills. So I like his chance. And the horse that he beat, HMS Seahorse at Punchestown as well. Really interesting horse for Paul Nolan. He's got 1 or 2 good chances through the week actually at prices. Might be a stable just to keep an eye on. And I thought HMS Seahorse did precious little wrong at Punchestown in the face of a good horse. He was made favourite to beat the Tide Turns that day, and subsequently, obviously, 4th in Spring Juvenile, the Tide Turns. So that HMS Seahorse form already looks a bit better, and he qualified for this race with a comfortable win. I think he ran first time out in a maiden behind Max Swinney, so he obviously got a bit of quality about him. Decent ground won't harm him, one little jot, and I think Brian Cooper was quite sweet on him, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, he was only beaten, 2 and a bit lengths by the Tide Turns in that race at Punchestown, and then obviously he's going to be £9 better off with the and Brazil, who's actually shorter than him in the market, was behind both the Tide Turns and HMS that day. And obviously last week when we spoke to Brian Cooper on Racing Weekly, he actually admitted that he purchased the horse, or advised the connections to purchase this horse with a view to running in this race. And his progression has been just ideal, I think, in the way that he's building up to the race. The horse. And apart from everything else, he also added that the horse was quite late in getting to Paul Nolan. So when he ran against the Tide Turns first time up at Punchestown, he hadn't been at Paul Nolan's for that long. And then since then, there's been that steady progression. He finally got off the mark, 3rd time over hurdles. He's got a handy weight. And I thought he would, I really fancy him for the opening day. So he's my selection.
Big price, isn't he? Big price.
Yeah, I thought he was an attractive way to start off the opening day, but we may come back to him later on in this very show. So that's the Boodles that we chatted about. Now the last race on the opening day is this year it's the Ukraine Appeal National Hunt Challenge Cup, and it's a race that in years gone by has attracted big fields, but this year we've only got 7 runners. Obviously, it's a little bit easier, you would think, in theory, to try and find the winner. Is that how you see it, Sam?
Well, hopefully, yeah, because the selection's only got 6 to beat, and I think there might be a little bit of a hole in Statler, not a drastic one, but he just lacks experience for this race, and the stats will tell you that you ideally want plenty of chasing experience to come here. So, although he was very, very impressive in a Grade 3 last time at Naas, there is that just little question mark about the fact that he hasn't had that many runs over fences. I really like Run Wild Fred. I think he's tough, dependable. He's quite a powerful galloper, jumps well. He's contested a number of really good handicaps, not least, Irish Nationals and Troy Towns, etc., etc. He's from a stable that have mapped this race out for him for some time. They've got a good record in the race as well. They would have won it last year, but for obvious reasons. But Galvin did, and look where he is in the Gold Cup betting. So it's definitely a race that they have a good look at, and they identify a very live contender for it. It's very unoriginal, but at 5 to 2, I think he's a fair bet, really. Other than lacking in a bit of Cheltenham form, I think he's a decent bet.
Okay, well, I quite like Vanilla, who obviously beat Statler in the Albert Bartlett at the festival last year, and I know he was behind him at Naas in January, but I can't believe that was. I mean, he's a long way behind him. Can't believe that was Vanilla's form. Obviously, we know about the Gavin Cromwell stable not being in great form, but fingers crossed he's confident in the stable going to pick up for the festival. And also in that run at Naas in January, Vanilla gave Statler £8, so obviously racing off level weights in the National Hunt chase. So I like Vanilla, and hopefully bouncing back to his best at a track that he's already excelled at. He would be my selection.
The Cromwell team last weekend, Rish, had 4 winners from nowhere.
That's right.
There you go.
So they're on song again. Magic.
They're
Just
flying.
in time for the festival.
They're flying.
Yeah. Okay, so we've been through those 4 races. In fact, now we've been through all the races on the opening day. It's time. We've heard the Pat nap. Now it's time for Sam's nap and Rishi's nap on day 1. Sam, away you go.
Unoriginal, Run Wild Fred in the last.
I'm going for HMS Seahorse in the Boodles. That's my nap on day 1. And what about a nap for the meeting, Sam?
Oh, good question. Galvin in the Gold Cup. There you go.
Galvin in the Gold Cup. Well, I'm loath to put up dear old Sir Gerhard in the Ballymore because it's not the race that I backed him for. So I've done my dough. So instead, I'm going to put up another horse that I'm totally convinced is a top class horse, and that's L'Homme Pressé against, I imagine, Brave Man's Game and a hoist in the Brown Advisory. I hope that my judgment is right. I hope Charlie Deutsch's judgment is right, that he is a superstar in the making. So L'Homme Pressé in the Brown Advisory for me.
The dogs are barking for him anyway, Rish.
It's all about timing. The dogs barking L'Homme Pressé. Well, that is it for this edition of Racing Weekly, brought to you by Oddschecker in association with Bet365. Thank you so much to Fergal O'Brien. Thank you to Pat Cooney and all who've contributed along the way as we build up to one of the greatest events. Before we go, one final reminder that Oddschecker is the only tip you really need for Cheltenham. If you're having a bet, you'll get the most out of it by using Oddschecker. Compare odds, find the best special offers for every race from more than 25 bookmakers in one place. And we really hope you've enjoyed our build up to the Cheltenham Festival over the last 8 weeks. It's been a joy to share this podcast with you, Sam, listening to
Likewise.
Your chat. And I hope that somewhere along the way that you and I have got some things right. I guess the beauty is enough talking now. It's time for action. By the way, if you like what you've heard or watched, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or in the comments section on YouTube. We'd certainly appreciate it. From Sam, myself, the team on Racing Weekly, we wish you all the very best of luck at this year's Cheltenham Festival. And whatever happens, we hope that the 4 days of racing puts a smile on your face. Thank you very much for watching.